In 2013, President Xi Jinping kickstarted the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, envisioning it as a revolutionary catalyst set to overhaul international trade, infrastructure, and progress. Painting a picture of interconnected continents through megaprojects, the BRI ignited global intrigue. However, as days turned into years, the grand ambitions of the initiative have dimmed, revealing a harsh reality of unmet expectations. So how did a project of this size become a 5 trillion debt burden? What happened to it, and will it ever be finished? Stick around to find out. Xi Jinping embarked on what could be deemed the most ambitious venture in history, aiming to mend the repercussions caused by CCP policies. To him, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, symbolized a beacon of hope, promising economic prosperity and enhanced connectivity while bolstering China's sway, ensuring resource access, and polishing its global image. He went as far as boasting that Beijing's BRI was the epitome of a century-defining endeavor, poised to redefine the global hierarchy of power and influence. However, a decade later, despite Beijing's reluctance to admit failure, the results are far from what Xi Jinping had envisioned. So, what happened? Fast forward, let's delve into the reality now. Take, for instance, the massive China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, estimated at a staggering $62 billion, aimed at linking China to Pakistan's Gwadar port on the Arabian Sea. However, when it comes to the specifics of BRI projects, details are barely sufficient. There's no confirmed comprehensive list of all the projects and stakeholders involved, though estimates suggest over 2,600 projects across more than 100 countries. This lack of transparency raised early concerns. Initially, there was optimism about BRI being mutually beneficial for Chinese companies and recipient nations, but it's obvious that the investment strategy was flawed. But why? Essentially, many of the involved countries lacked the financial capacity to finance these massive projects. Given that a majority were either economically challenged or developing nations, China stepped in by offering loans without imposing any conditions. Here's how it played out. Initially, China injected substantial funds into these nations, sidestepping the bureaucratic hurdles typical of Western institutions like the World Bank, which often require extensive assessments and procedures. Instead, Beijing swiftly provided loans, sparing recipients from lengthy processes. Subsequently, as countries accepted the funds and began construction, they heavily relied on Chinese expertise and resources. This reliance resulted in Chinese companies dominating infrastructure projects, leaving borrowing nations indebted at market rates. Meanwhile, Chinese firms, seeking new opportunities amid limited prospects domestically, found promising markets in Africa and Asia. However, this seemingly straightforward approach introduced layers of complexity. As infrastructure projects neared completion, Chinese companies gained significant control over trade routes, effectively integrating themselves into global supply chains. Thus, while the plan seemed uncomplicated in theory, its implementation unfolded into a nuanced situation with far-reaching implications beyond the initial concept. Initially, getting countries on board was a breeze. After all, who wouldn't be enticed by China's generous offers with no strings attached? Deals were inked and construction commenced. However, Beijing soon encountered its first hurdle. Chinese diplomats, businessmen, and politicians found themselves scratching their heads, pondering a fundamental question: who was in charge? Was it the colossal state-owned enterprises, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or perhaps the influential ministries of Commerce and Finance? The lack of clarity led to bureaucratic chaos. Consequently, Chinese authorities approved some dubious and ultimately financially unsustainable projects. Before this issue could be resolved, another complication arose. Local politicians often made unreasonable demands. A prime example is the case of the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. When both India and the United States declined to finance the project due to doubts about its economic viability, China stepped in to fund it. Despite concerns from Sri Lankan authorities about the port's sustainability, particularly with Colombo Port already handling the majority of the country's maritime trade. The new Hambantota port was slated to be built in President Mahinda Rajapaksa's hometown. Quite the coincidence, right? In the years following, Chinese campaign contributors generously supported President Rajapaksa's re-election campaigns. Another coincidence? If this doesn't ring alarm bells of corruption, perhaps you're onto something. The situation gets even more concerning when we delve into the numbers. At least 47 projects, totaling a staggering $41.2 billion across 10 countries, have been marred by allegations of corruption, controversies, or violations, according to aid data cited by the World Bank. Bribery and transportation projects may even account for 5 to 20% of the overall project costs. Researchers have flagged that 35% of all Belt and Road projects have been affected by issues ranging from corruption scandals to labor violations, environmental hazards, and public protests. Despite these challenges, Beijing seems relatively unfazed. This trend is emblematic of the Belt and Road Initiative's overarching theme. China promised minimal regulation and ended up delivering on that promise by virtually regulating nothing at all. The COVID-19 pandemic worsened existing debt distress and dealt a severe blow to the Chinese economy due to market shocks and a sharp decline in global demand for Chinese goods. Additionally, the BRI's significant contribution to global carbon emissions has put China under international pressure to make its investments more environmentally friendly. However, China's energy investments still heavily rely on fossil fuels, posing a challenge to achieving global climate goals. To compound matters, Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted China's ambitious Eurasian rail dreams, suspending container transport along key routes. This disruption has significantly impacted supply chains and logistical operations, posing challenges for trade and connectivity. Furthermore, the railway service crossing Ukraine has also faced suspension and diversion, depriving China of a vital gateway between Asia and Europe. Poor project selection, hastily signed contracts, and deals awarded to Chinese companies without open auctions have only exacerbated the situation. Developing countries found themselves burdened with massive debt when these projects failed to deliver. Countries like Pakistan, Laos, Mongolia, Kyrgyzstan, Montenegro, Tajikistan, and the Maldives have witnessed their debt skyrocket due to easy Chinese financing. In fact, 42 countries now have Chinese debt exceeding 10% of their GDP. Another significant issue with the Belt and Road Initiative lies in its loan structure. Think about it like this. As a developing country, you approach the World Bank or the IMF for financial assistance, only to be met with stringent conditions dictating how you must manage your economy to secure their funds. However, when China offers you money with minimal paperwork and fuss, they seem like a guardian angel. It's only after you've signed the agreement that the truth dawns on you. China wasn't a guardian angel at all. They were more like a loan shark. Institutions like the World Bank and Western lenders typically offer loans to developing countries at low interest rates of around 1 to 3%, with repayment periods spanning up to 30 years. However, Chinese loans often come with interest rates as high as 7% and must be repaid within just 15 years. This stark contrast in terms is striking. While Western lenders provide ample time for repayment, Beijing demands its money back in less than half the time. Indeed, China seems to maintain an advantage even in situations where it appears to lose. The unsustainable nature of Chinese financing has raised concerns that China may be employing debt trap diplomacy to expand its regional influence. What do you think of today's video? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do leave us a like and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.